Hey everyone, my guest today is Clifford Brown. Clifford gave up his career as a partner in a Beverly Hills commercial law firm and his dream home over the ocean to pursue what became a 27-year adventure in foreign aid, both as a legal advisor and then senior manager. His tales of USAID's work during civil chaos in Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guinea, his firsthand views of the dilemmas USAID lawyers deal with, the difficulties in persuading farmers to grow cocoa instead of coca, and the bureaucratic rain dance required to start new programs, provide an enlightening overview of the world of international foreign aid. As he puts it, at a time when spirituality is at an all time low in human history, foreign aid reflects our better angels. All right, welcome to the show, Clifford. I want to thank you for being here today.
Well,
And
thanks for having me. I'm happy to talk about
yeah,
state and anything else you want to talk about.
perfect. Yes, I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what brings you here today, what you're working on, um, and what's driving you right now.
Well, early in 2000, I'm a retired Foreign Service officer. I was a mission director for USAID. That's the U.S. Agency for International Development. It used to be called AID, the Agency for International Development. That was a cute pun because it didn't mean aid, although that's what we did. It was our
Yeah.
foreign aid agency, and it was the agency that was created in the 60s by John F. Kennedy.
Mhm.
And I was a lawyer in Los Angeles in the late 80s when I worked on a big case. And when it ended, I saw an ad. They wanted attorneys that had a foreign language, and I spoke Spanish at the time and still do. But
Yeah.
I flew back to DC and I interviewed with them, and I saw this big map on the wall, and they had little pins all over the world on the maps. And I said, "What are those?" And he said, "That's where our attorneys are." And I said, "Well, I got to have that job." So
Yeah.
I literally gave up 2/3 of my income. I was a partner in a Beverly Hills firm. I joined the foreign aid agency. I went overseas. I was overseas for almost 27 years, working on a huge variety of programs. About halfway through my career, I was converted to full-scale diplomat. When I first joined, one of my son had a heart issue. He couldn't get a full
Okay.
medical clearance, so I wasn't an official diplomat until about halfway through my career. But I rapidly rose then to the level of mission director, which is as high as you can go in the field. And I spent most of those years overseas. I was in Africa for 3 years to start with. Then I spent 9 years in Latin America, Central America, Colombia. Then I went to Central Asia, um, and I was the mission director well, the country representative, they called it in those days, to Kyrgyzstan. I was there for the Tulip Revolution. And then I became the director for programs in West Africa, Guinea, Sierra Leone. And after that, I retired in 2009, but I got bored in retirement and I went back overseas as a contractor.
Uh-huh.
I went to Peru and I was there from 2013 to 2016. I came back to the DC area. That's where I am now. I'm retired,
Okay.
but I was totally offended earlier this year when, well, last year when Elon
Yeah.
Musk and Donald Trump said it was a bunch of crooks and they were corrupt
Uh,
people who were wasting our money. So they fired everybody.
yeah.
Most of the people who got fired were not Americans. They were overseas staff. Most of our missions had far more locals working for us than Americans. But
Okay.
it's it was a tragedy in my view, and I can get into why, and that's
Yeah.
what I like to do. I'm trying to get the word out about what a terrible thing that was to destroy that agency.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, so from we kind of discussed this before recording, but from my understanding is that there was fraud that did exist, but there were also a lot of good programs that people really relied on. And I know Elon Musk himself later said that we something along the lines of we approached this with a hatchet and moving forward after they started getting criticized for being so aggressive. You know, he said moving forward, we will be using a chisel instead of a hatchet, basically. Um, but it was kinda too late for a lot of things, like, that was months later, and I'm wondering what got cut that shouldn't have been, you know?
Well, let me just spend a few minutes saying what it was that we did, and I'll
Mhm.
preface this by saying that we didn't cook up these programs. These were things
Uh-huh.
that our government, the Congress wanted us to do overseas. The executive branch wanted us to do these projects, and the State Department always had approval
Okay.
rights, and they got to weigh in on what it was we were going to do. And many times the congressmen themselves would write earmarks that said USAID will do this or that. Now, what
Okay.
did we do? It spans the entire range of human activity between the military and what an embassy does. An embassy
Uh-huh.
is primarily there to establish, set up meetings and pass information back and forth. And
Mhm.
you all know what the military does. But
Right.
everything in between, let me just give you just a few examples so that you get a sense of the
Yeah.
variety of what we did. People know about the humanitarian responses. USAID was the home for the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance. So every time there was a disaster, we had people and supplies and other things posted in different places around the world where
Uh-huh.
we could go in with water, with tents, with portable bathrooms and food supplies and whatnot, and we could respond to earthquakes and tsunamis and forest fires and you name it.
Yeah.
When smoke was coming into Texas from Florida and I mean, coming into Texas and Florida from forest fires in Central America, USAID got the call. When the Colombian or most of the governments in Central America wanted to train their judicial systems to do trials instead of the way they did it in the past, which was all basically just paperwork, uh,
Mhm.
they would agree with us that we would bring in people that could train them how to do jury trials. When the legislators in the former Soviet Union wanted to set up laws that would regulate commercial activity, since central planning was no longer what they did, then they asked USAID to bring in the accountants, bring in the people to train the businessmen to to set up modern accounting systems. When uh, we were working in Central America, we created entire industries down there. For instance, we sent a shipment of onions that we grew as an experiment in
Uh-huh.
Honduras to Miami, and we proved that you could grow onions in the mountains of Honduras and you could market them in the US at a time when we didn't have fresh onions here. And 10 years after we did that, we had 500,000 people making their livings growing onions. And then we did that with flowers
Yeah.
in Costa Rica and Colombia. We did it with melons and cantaloupes. We did it with shrimp farms, strawberries, with snow peas. We created entire industries that employed many people who
Uh-huh.
would otherwise, seek to emigrate to the US to come up here to live. But we also, in doing that, created lots of jobs for Americans right here and
Right.
products that wouldn't be available now. Um, when the Ebola broke out in Africa, it was USAID got the call to go down there and investigate the method of burying the bodies and give protective clothing to the health workers.
Mhm.
Rice prices shot through the roof in 2007 in West Africa, where I was. We facilitated the delivery of emergency food supplies to these people. We would investigate tropical diseases. We would teach teachers how to teach kids how to read. We would introduce new systems to prevent corruption in the procurement systems in these governments when they asked for
Mhm.
that kind of help. And I could go on and on. I could spend days
Right.
in the kinds of things we did. The other thing we did is we collected information over something like since the 1960s, we had a vast trove of information about these projects and about conditions in these countries centered in something called the Center for Development Information and Evaluation. That
Uh-huh.
entire library is gone. And
Yeah.
all of that information is no longer available to academics.
Uh-huh.
We've got websites now that track the number of kids who are dying from malaria, from other diseases that we were combating and we were fighting.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to describe the scope of what it was that we did, but it's all done. And
Mhm.
and the way they did it was crazy because when you terminate programs, you got people out there, you got supplies en route, you got other things. You create a lot of claims against the US government that are going to get paid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As for the fraud and the waste, it's absolute nonsense to say that the USAID staff was corrupt. We had bad actors here and there, like every agency does, and
Uh-huh.
there are people that did go to jail for different crimes they committed. I mean, it was a big operation over many years in many countries. So yeah, there were a few examples, but it's no more than any other federal
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah.
I was so offended, I gave up 2/3 of my income to join that agency.
Right.
Most of
Right.
the staff were some of the they were very idealistic folks. We had a lot of former Peace Corps volunteers. These people could have made a lot more money in the private sector, but they
Yeah.
chose to work in this area. So
Yeah.
that's what inspired me to. I wrote this book about it that called Inside USAID. But um,
Yeah.
my basic message is that was a tragedy. I hope it gets reversed.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm going to work backwards a little bit. You mentioned information disappeared, and I remember reading about that. How do we know how that disappeared?
The website shut down. It was all stuff that
Oh,
was available online, and you can't get into that website.
okay.
Hopefully, that data is out there somewhere, and
Yeah.
if we have a different a change of heart within our own government,
Yeah.
we can set it up again. I did want to say a little bit about Elon Musk and perhaps his
Yeah.
ways. I'm a personal friend of the guy that was the mission director in South Africa
Okay.
in the early 90s when the anti-apartheid movement, that was a movement that we supported. I mean, that was one of
Mhm.
the many things we did. We supported NGOs and other people there who were fighting the apartheid movement. Well, Elon Musk was a young white man in South Africa at that time.
Uh-huh.
Uh, my friend was he later became the director of the Peace Corps, but at the time he was there when Nelson Mandela got out of jail. He met the man, and apartheid did come to an end in South Africa. And his
Mhm.
theory is that Musk had a personal bone to pick with against USAID because he didn't appreciate our work to fight apartheid. That's
Yeah.
theory. I don't know that for a fact, but I do know that we did support that anti-apartheid movement,
Yeah.
and it was the white South Africans who basically lost control of the country, and it's
Um,
run by the majority, the black population.
yeah. Yeah. And so also at the beginning you had mentioned that the stuff that you guys do, a lot of it is approved by Congress and other politicians. So to me it sounds like um USAID is being is being placed the scapegoat on certain things. Like if they didn't think that some of that spending was appropriate, then why was it approved by Congress?
Well, exactly.
You see what
I
I'm
think
saying?
it's more of a political stunt. It was a.
Yeah.
Give you one example. People in the U.S. have always had an inflated view of how much we spend overseas on foreign aid.
Uh-huh.
Foreign aid was a drop in a very big bucket. One year, there were two planes that went down. A B 1 bomber crashed in Montana and a B 1 bomber crashed in Texas. Now, I
Mhm.
remember that year, I looked at each of those planes, each one cost more than
Yeah.
$500 million. That number is more than all of our foreign aid to all of sub-Saharan Africa in each of those years. So each plane
Yeah.
was more than what we gave. What and when I say gave, what we would do is hire Americans to go there and teach people.
Yeah.
There was stuff provided, yes, and certainly
Yeah.
big infrastructure projects, but those were in places like Afghanistan and Sudan and I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan, Pakistan also.
Uh-huh.
But where I work, most of our budget was for staff, and the staff they were Americans that went out there to work on these projects. We had
Yeah.
implementers, they were NGOs, they were universities, they were and there's also a lot of consulting firms that got in on that too. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a big business, frankly. It's not nearly as big as the military industrial complex, but it was a big employer of a lot of Americans. So we didn't
Yeah.
hand money away.
Yeah. And you said that you mentioned the Peace Corps, they work with you too, or worked with.
Well, they're a separate agency, and the
Uh-huh.
volunteers in most of the countries I was posted, yes, we had a Peace Corps program, and the
Uh-huh.
volunteers actually very, um, in a way, they were the farm club for a lot
Yeah.
of times. We needed contractors, and the Peace Corps volunteers would often apply to us for jobs. It was a different lifestyle for them because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were out in the villages working with families and local communities. We were in the capital cities, or at least our offices were. I mean,
Uh-huh.
obviously we got out in the field a lot. We did a lot of field trips and whatnot. And the Peace Corps volunteers were quite useful to us sometimes because they knew these communities. They were
Yeah.
living there already. So they could
Yeah.
introduce us to people, and we could fund things that they didn't have the budget for. So
Yeah. One of the people I went to school with, she was in the Peace Corps, and I know she was in Africa teaching them how to farm
mm,
and be sustainable. And I believe that had to get shut down for COVID, because she was not there the entire time, and everything was just crazy back then. But um, I do I do think that those programs are important to me, and I think that they get ignored where, you know, there's people on the right will say, like, we don't want to be sending money to other countries. We don't want to do, blah, blah, blah. Well, if we can help these other countries to farm, to provide their own resources, or, then they won't, I guess, rely on people as much. But what you mentioned too was that they have stuff to offer us as well, like the growing crops that we can't grow year round here in the United States, or at least in certain areas. Um, it, I think there's too much of a mindset of, again, I do like our country to be fiscal, but I do want our country to have a heart. And I think that there's too much of a mindset now where it's almost like it's I don't want to call it selfish. But I think people are kind of forgetting what we have and how we can benefit from working with other countries, help them. They might be able to help us, and it's just a good thing to be doing. I guess I mean, I don't really know if I've left you off with something to say with that. That was
you
just
know,
kind of my input, my thought about it while you're talking.
of course, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, foreign aid, I say in the book, it's a reflection of our better angels.
Mhm.
There was an old Chinese philosopher that said there isn't a person on earth who sees, if they see a small child sitting on the edge of a well about to fall in, that
Yeah.
doesn't have this natural impulse to go try and save that child. And
Yeah.
you don't say whose kid is it or what is his or her nationality. You want to help, and I think
Right.
foreign aid is a manifestation of the concern that we have for our neighbors, but it's also in our
Mhm.
own interest. I mean, every every great world religion will tell you that the giver benefits as much as the receiver.
Mhm.
In the foreign aid world, that is true. I mean, when we help these other countries, two things happen. We help ourselves in the sense that it doesn't do us any good to have extremely poor, desperate neighbors near us.
Right.
And the world is getting smaller, so everybody's really near us, and that's
Mhm.
these days. I mean, it's not just our immediate neighbors or Central
Yeah.
America, but we also get wiser. We understand what's happening in those countries, and that helps us adjust our own programs. We learn from what we do.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing now in the US is that we have a breakdown of trust, and that was so often the problem in the third world. You had people that they would trust us more than they trusted themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they would trust the Americans to help run a program or set up a program when they wouldn't trust. You really saw this in Africa, where you had the different tribal groups. The borders in Africa
Mhm.
were all drawn by Europeans, so they encompass, in many cases, they encompass groups that just don't get along with each other.
Yeah.
But we could see that distrust. just right up in front. The other thing we learned, or I saw,
Hmm.
the fragility of the social consensus. It is a very fragile thing, and I don't think
Yeah.
the U.S. really appreciates how fragile it is. I mean, we may find out, but uh,
Yeah.
I was in places that fell apart just overnight. I was in Kyrgyzstan when the Tulip Revolution happened, and then nobody expected that. But there were some young men who there were rent-a-crowds, I call them, to rich
Hmm.
hired crowds, and then the crowds were fighting with each other. And some of these young men got over the fence. The presidential guard had been told, "Don't load your rifles. We don't want any deaths here." Well, the men
Right.
got into the White House, their version of it, started stealing things, lit fires, and the president fled the country. And that night,
Jeez.
whole society the police disappeared, and these mobs raged through the city, burning the place up. And we were working all night to protect our staff and other people in the city.
Yeah.
Similarly, in Guinea, I was there when the president, the long-standing president Lassana Conte, died, and the army couldn't agree on who's going to take over. So there were
Hmm.
battles going on. We couldn't go to work. We had to hunker down in our homes. And I visited some of our grantees where the staff had been lying on the floor, and I saw the holes in
Uh-huh.
the walls where the bullets were passing above them.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was in Guatemala when the president ordered the military to surround the Congress and surround the Supreme Court and arrest the members of the
Uh-huh.
Supreme Court and Congress. I could go on, but
Yeah.
the social consensus is fragile, and we witness
Hmm.
up close and personal sometimes. And I really
Yeah.
fear for what's going on in the U.S. right now. We don't really appreciate how fragile a society really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think anyone knows what's going on in the US right now. It's
Uh,
times are looking dark.
I don't, but I hope we
Oh,
get through it.
yeah. What do you think the USAID got wrong about working with religious groups?
Oh, well, that's a battle I fought unsuccessfully for 20 years. And
Oh no.
let me tell you, a lady came up to me in Haiti in 1989, and she said, "Cliff, they're saying prayers in these buildings that we built." And I said, "Well,
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, what's so?" And she said, "Well, isn't that an infringement on that's mixing government with religion, free exercise?" I said,
Oh.
"Well, the First Amendment says that Congress will pass no law limiting the free exercise of religion in the states." Now,
Mhm.
they say prayers down in that building. Does that limit our ability to choose whatever faith we wish? No. And it also says that Congress will pass no law respecting an establishment of religion, which meant at
Uh-huh.
the time we are not going to have a state religion. I said, "Well, that's not
Yeah.
bad either. So what's the problem?" And that was before the war on terror. Okay. Now, in the 1970s, there was a Supreme Court decision that said, "You will do nothing that will excessively entangle you with religion." And that has been, in my view, misinterpreted to mean that we can't work with faith-based groups overseas. Um, we can debate what is or is not excessive entanglement, but whatever it
Uh-huh.
is, that phrase does not show up in the Constitution. And at the time, it was a 5-4 decision. And Justice Scalia later called it brain spawn. It's not something the Constitution says. But in any event,
Yeah.
whether we were entangled or not by doing any of that, once we had a war on terror underway, I figure we're entangled, right? Because
Yeah.
they got us entangled. And so I'm in Kyrgyzstan, and the University of Montana comes to town, and they want to translate parts of the Quran that say suicide is a sin, which it is to Islam. You can't even
Mhm.
be buried in a Muslim cemetery if you commit suicide, let
Oh.
alone if you commit suicide and take out a couple hundred other innocent people at the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's a great idea. Let's translate the portions of the Quran that say, suicide is wrong, and let's take them out of Arabic, which they can't read, and put them into Kyrgyz and Uzbek, so that we can at least have some effective diplomacy here that
Mhm.
would combat those groups. And the lawyers in aid, and I had been one, they said, "No, can't do it." And that's where it stands. They will not touch it. So what's happening now is it's legal to use U.S. government funded equipment to shoot somebody, but you
Uh-huh.
can't use a simple book to that we pay for to persuade that terrorist that he's got it wrong. His own religion really doesn't sanction what they're doing. The Wahhabi faith
Yeah.
is a perverted version of Islam. And I think that's
Okay.
completely nuts. I wish
Yeah.
we would. And I know that there are people in the military that have gone so far as to even build mosques, for instance, to win
Uh-huh.
the hearts of a certain community in places like Afghanistan or Iraq.
Right.
Happened. But USAID, which was our soft power initiative, was I called it preemptive capitulation. We just said, no, we're not going to touch it if it has anything to do with theology. Well, if you're in a war against an extreme version of that religion,
Yeah.
must, in my view, talk about their misunderstanding of their own faith. And
Yeah.
if anybody who says, well, no, it's going to be too much entanglement, I say, my answer is, hey, we're already entangled. The issue now is
Yeah.
unentangled.
Yeah. And it's not like you're preaching it, or, you're just, "Hey, you got this wrong,"
Yeah,
and helping.
right,
It's
right.
helping. Yeah. I do see that, religion and politics is tricky, it's, I don't like to see things get passed based on religion, but obviously everyone has their right to their religion. It's just
Sure.
I just don't think laws should be passed based on it, but sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high-protein snacks for on-the-go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. I also saw that you have some information on trafficking in and out of Africa.
Yeah, that's it's. I'll just warn you, this is not a subject for young children, but
Okay.
uh, during some of that chaos that I described earlier in Guinea, when the military was fighting each other,
Mhm.
our defense attaché was downtown Conakry in a bar, and two Asian women approached him. They did not speak French and they did not speak Susu, but they had enough English to communicate their situation to him. Both of them had been smuggled onto a freighter. It was a Maersk Line freighter. That's a big shipping company, and the crews on
Okay.
those ships are primarily men from South Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines,
Mm.
and they had duped these ladies into coming on board thinking they were going to Europe or the United States. But instead, they took them to West Africa. They took away their passports. They forced them into sex business. And I mean, that is a phenomenon that's terrible enough all by itself.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of women around the world, and it goes in both directions. There are African women who think that they're getting a free trip to Europe, but in fact they're taken somewhere and forced into the sex trade.
Oh
What's
man.
going on now, and we documented this to the point where we filmed some of these. The ladies worked in each of the major shipping lines, had these homes in the capital city where these ladies were housed, and
Hmm.
they would go out to the ships on little pirogues. Those are like large canoes. They call them pirogues,
Uh huh.
I don't know what the English term is. Dories, I guess, is one word for it. But
Okay.
dories would take these ladies out to the ships, and that's where they were engaged in their trade, if you want to call it that.
Uh huh.
And because the sailors were apparently afraid to come ashore because of HIV/AIDS, they thought if they came ashore, they had a better chance of getting infected. So they have these homes, and I guess the women were I don't know, but I assume that somehow the sailors thought it was safer that way because perhaps
Yeah.
these were being checked out for diseases or whatever. But in any event, the trade, the business occurred out on the ships, right? And I was a sailor once. A ship is a big, it's a mini city in some
Uh
cases.
huh.
And I know you can smuggle things onto a ship sometimes under the noses of the officers because I saw
Yeah.
people do it. Uh, not people, but a big freighter is a great big vessel.
Yeah.
And now, what happens now, because there's also so many Chinese construction projects underway in Africa, and the Chinese import their laborers. They bring entire teams there to build a railroad or build an iron mine or something. They don't use the locals. They bring their laborers in, and then they have charter flights that go back and forth. So what's happening now? In some cases, if the women object to what their situation is,
Hmm.
the nicest way to say this, they become involuntary organ donors. That means exactly
Oh.
what you can infer. And I saw a video um, that was provided to my friend Jason Hatch. He was the defense attaché
Hmm.
of a. It was an African woman because, as I say, the trade goes in both directions. She was surrounded by a group of men speaking Portuguese. You couldn't see their face.
Okay.
We don't know that this was Guinea-Bissau, could have been Mozambique or Angola. She's told, "We're not going to hurt you. Hold this metal plate up on your head." And the next thing you show, she's knocked out, and they immediately start massaging her arms and legs to keep the blood flowing.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch the rest of it, but they're harvesting organs, and then those organs are put into coolers, and those charter flights back and forth to Southeast Asia carry those organs back to the Far East, where they are then sold as valuable commodities in the medical business.
Okay.
And it's an outrageously horrific phenomenon that's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is if they fight against what China is doing in Africa. Did I understand that correctly?
well, there's a lot of people involved in it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it starts with the women who are. It's a side business run by the crewmen on these freighters. They dupe these ladies into going in one direction or the other. Either they fool Africans into thinking they're going to Europe when they're in fact going to Odessa or
Yeah.
port in Europe for the exotic sex business up there, or
Mhm.
they are women in South Asia that are fooled into coming to Africa. Now, the crews on these ships are the ones that are. I'm not indicting every crewman, obviously, but this is going
Yeah.
on under the noses of management of these freighters. and the women are brought to wherever their trade will be conducted, and then
Mhm.
the uh, the body parts trafficking is a phenomenon that may involve more than simply Chinese. It may involve other nationalities
Yeah.
or airlines and whatnot. But it's the body parts are going back to places where they can be sold where they're not tracked. And um,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that there will be a book that's coming out soon. I think it's Death to Order. I think it's what it's called, and it's
Okay.
um, I saw an announcement of this book that's about to come out that may be talking about the same phenomenon. But to my knowledge,
Yeah.
I went back to work for a whole year, specifically to try to interest donors and multilateral organizations in this phenomenon. But the challenge is it's hard to know who has jurisdiction. You know, a lot of this
Yeah.
takes place on the open seas, and so it's very hard to get donors to understand. The first challenge is getting them to believe that it's real, and
Right.
even if they do, then it's, well, now what can we do about it and how?
Yeah.
We're not going to stop every vessel at sea and start searching them. So the only thing I can suggest is that people just be made aware of it, so that in those countries where these women are recruited, they become a little more cognizant of the risks.
Right.
And that's going to take
Right.
good journalism and more publicity. But that
Yeah.
so far, I was not able to get any money dedicated to try and solving that problem. I talked and talked and talked to a lot of different organizations in the year that I worked. I took a job with the American Bar Association. This was
Uh-huh.
AID, and I spent a year being responsible for their programs in the DRC, which is, it used to be Zaire. It's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and also
Okay.
Liberia and the Sahel region in Africa. But I got nowhere with it. It's,
Yeah. It every time I talk to somebody who does work with other countries or are from another country, it just uh really puts into perspective how some of the things here in the United States that we're just throwing huge fits over are really not that big of a deal compared to what people in other countries are dealing with. We forget how lucky we are,
that's
really.
that's quite true. We're we're pretty lucky here so far.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect, but um so did USAID work with to prevent bride kidnapping?
Yes, that's another
Sorry, I bounce around from topic to topic.
in the book too.
Okay.
Um, in rural Kyrgyzstan, well, before the Soviet Union, this practice has been around for hundreds of years in Central
Uh-huh.
Asia. The Soviets kind of suppressed it, but when the Soviet Union fell apart, the practice got revived in Central Asia. And we financed a film. I didn't start our work in this area, but before I got to Kyrgyzstan, we had engaged the University of Central Europe to do a film on bride kidnapping. And what they did is they went out into the countryside and they got four families to agree to let the film crews film the entire process. And so what happens is young men, they don't date. So the way the men get their brides is they literally go out on the street and kidnap them. The first scene in one of these in the film was a young man in his house. He's getting dressed up in a suit, and his grandmother is telling him, "Don't get a pretty one. I don't want a pretty one. I want you to get one that's going to work." And so then
Uh-huh.
he's in a car with his buddies, and they go to a bus stop and they wait until the school bus pulls up, and then they get out and they grab one of the girls that's about to get on the school bus and they drag her back in the car. She's kicking and screaming at them, and they force her back to the groom's home. They put her in the
Uh-huh.
corner, and then all of his elder female relatives get around that girl, the grandmas, the aunts. They get around her and they say, "Come on, honey, you got to put the scarf on. This is how it happens." And
Yeah.
if she puts the scarf on, her family will not take her back.
Oh,
That means
good.
she's married. That's how it
Yeah.
happens. And if she resists enough, in some cases, the man is told, "You go in there and do what you have to do," and it's community sanctioned rape.
Oh,
I have
my
personally
God.
sat in college classrooms with young women dressed in Western attire, and I've had 19 and 20-year-old women tell me, "This is how we do it. This is our tradition. Since we don't date, how else are we going to get married?" And I had young men tell me, "This is the wisdom of our ancestors." This we estimated something like 60% of the rural marriages in Kyrgyzstan were as a result of these kidnappings. Now, in some cases, the kids agree to make it look like a kidnapping, right? Because
Okay.
they've already
That
they got to know each other, and in some cases,
yeah.
they want it to happen. But in most of them are not that way. Most of them are the guy's got his eye on somebody, and he kidnaps her, and that's how they do it. Uh, so the film showed case studies of 4 different families, right?
Mhm.
And they filmed the whole process at the beginning, and then they went back to each family a year later. Well, when they got to the fourth family, this is the last scene in the film, they went back to interview the bride.
Uh-huh.
She had committed suicide.
Yeah. I
I had
I could
one of
see
my
that.
staff was a teacher in Kyrgyzstan, and before he worked for us, he was a university teacher. He said he had a woman in his classroom try to commit suicide by jumping out the third story of her classroom window. She didn't want to go back down. Didn't want to go back to her husband. I had one of my staff members was a former Peace Corps volunteer, and
Uh-huh.
he blew an entire apartment that was filled with some of the girls who had escaped those marriages, and they were living with each other because their families wouldn't take them back.
Yeah.
It's just it's a mind-boggling phenomenon, frankly. But it,
Yeah.
it's still illegal in Kyrgyzstan, and the government, I guess, is taking steps to try and suppress it now. But
Good.
we were showing that film, and then we would have discussions with the college students afterwards. We were trying to just
Mhm.
raise awareness of the phenomenon. And when they told me that this is our tradition, I said, "Well, look, slavery was a tradition once upon a time
Yeah.
here too. Does that make it right?"
Right.
It's crazy.
I mean, yeah, can't I mean, if you wanna stick with tradition, why can't they just be accepting of the performative part of it? Like, "Okay, let's let them date, and then they can just pretend to kidnap and whatever," you know?
Yeah, no, it's
Uh,
it's it's hard to believe, but as I said at the beginning, some of the programs we work on, they just make us wiser in the sense
yeah,
you realize there's stuff that goes on out there that you really can't imagine all the different practices that are happening around the world in different societies. But
yeah,
it's a crazy
yeah,
world.
and, yeah. Where do you hope to see you I guess USAID is gone. Do you hope that, do you know if there's anyone working on trying to get it brought back or, under a different name or in a different capacity at all?
I know that most of the former Foreign Service officers who lost their jobs are all doing what they can to promote at
Mhm.
least public awareness of it, and that's what I'm trying to do right this moment. But
Yeah.
we can only hope that at some point, Congress is not ignorant of what USAID was. A lot of,
Uh-huh.
I spent a lot of time. If I have any criticism of USAID, sometimes it was basically that we spent far too much time entertaining Congress people who would come down to visit. When I was in Colombia, one year I think we had 32 congressional delegations come to town, and a lot of them
Uh-huh.
clearly just boondoggles. But
Okay.
they would go out and they would visit our projects, or they would at least listen to us come and give presentations as to what we were doing. So there's a lot of Congress people that know what we were and what we did.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that are writing about it to this day. I just think
Yeah.
this particular administration is not interested in reviving it. Now, if and when it is revised, are there ways we can improve it? Of course. I mean,
Mhm.
there was um, I don't think we needed as many lawyers overseas, and I was one of them.
Okay.
when I was living in Guatemala, I said, I didn't need to move down here to do this. I could have done it from the phone up in Washington, D.C. But
Yeah.
it costs money to put a family overseas and give them home leave and R&R and pay for schooling and housing and whatnot. So, yeah, there are ways we can save money. And I'm sure if and when they revive the agency
Hmm.
known as aid or what, I'm sure that we will try to stay engaged with the rest of the world somehow.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that it's going to be gone forever. Now, whether it comes back in the same form or not, I don't know. There are things we can do to improve it. We could certainly speed up the procurement process so we don't spend a year fussing with, I mean, sometimes it was just crazy that the time it took to get a contract or a grant in place because we had so many
Yeah.
hoops to jump through to follow all these bureaucratic rules that we had. But
Right.
there are ways to make it more efficient for sure. And that's true for every agency in the federal government.
Yeah. Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that what we did was predominantly corrupt. It doesn't mean that it wasn't helping the U.S. achieve its objectives.
Hmm.
It was, and, and as I said before, it wasn't just our objectives. These were objectives of the executive branch and Congress and state.
Yeah.
So we were the tool. That's the message that I'm trying to convey is that we were the tool that allowed the U.S. to influence overseas events where the military would be inappropriate and where pure diplomacy, wasn't enough.
Hmm.
That tool is gone. I'm
Yeah.
sure that we will somehow reestablish it sometime in the future. But
Yeah.
right now, it's not being used. It's gone. And the people, and this is the real tragedy, it's all those people who learned how to do it. And it is something
Yeah.
to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Put these instruments in place and reach agreements with those governments. Those
Yeah.
people aren't there anymore. They're gone.
Right. Are there any political leaders that you know of that are working on this, working on getting this back?
I can't name them off the top of my head. I know that
Okay.
a lot of Democratic and also Republican
Uh,
congressmen were certainly aware and they appreciated what we were doing.
yeah.
So I assume that at some point within Congress there will be pressure to revive what it was that we did. And I know, they've tried to take some of the programs, a very small portion of them, and hand
Hmm.
them over to the State Department and say, please run these programs. Now, for the most part,
Okay.
those are some of the more obviously good for us kind of programs. The
Yeah.
monitoring epidemics overseas, that sort of thing. But it's a fraction of what we were doing before. And the people that are doing it in the State Department, they don't have experience running these programs. In some cases, they are actually reaching out to former laid off USAID staff and they're bringing them on to the State Department. And they're
Okay.
programs that are actually, getting funding now. But it's a small, small percentage of what was going on before.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
maybe I did share the example of the two planes that went down, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yes.
finished that thought. I think we've done surveys, and most Americans thought that we were spending like 10 or 15% of our budget on foreign aid. Really, it's under
Uh,
1%.
under 1%.
Yeah,
Wow. Y- Yeah. I mean, you look at, I think the way it came out, like right away with the start of the new administration and all the numbers that were being put out there, it seems like a lot. But then you look further into our defense spending, which is billions and billions of dollars, and in other, like basically what you said was that there's a lot more money going towards other things than um, what was going toward USAID. And yeah, I can't imagine the State Department could handle all of that on its own uh,
no,
to take over. So something will need to be recreated in whatever capacity at some point. Hopefully soon, while there's still people who know how to do the job.
right. Yeah, it's well, as I said, it's a tragedy. I'm glad you've given me this chance to at least vent about
Yeah,
it.
of course. Yeah, that was very interesting. Is there anything else that you want the audience to know?
Well, if they wanna read more about it, this is the book, Inside USAID. I don't
Perfect.
know if it shows up on there, but
It does.
it's
Yeah,
on
I was gonna ask you to do that, so
um, and, it's there for the reader. It's more of a story of my own career. It tries to say, what it was like to work in this business overseas, but
Mhm.
in so doing, I cover the places I was in and the events that happened in those countries. So it's not an academic look at USAID by any means, but it
Right.
is will give people a flavor for what foreign aid, at least what USAID did.
Yeah.
And there are other donors out there that are still doing it. So that's a part I didn't really talk about. But in most of these countries, there were always other donors there. Typically, we were the biggest one,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I hope the slack is taken up by some of the other agencies because almost all the Western European and the Canadians and the Japanese, they all have their foreign aid agencies, but they weren't as big as USAID,
Mhm.
but they're still there.
Yeah. And do you think other countries, that are better developed could be helping a little bit more? Just a little
Yes,
random side. Yeah.
the Scandinavians give a much higher percentage of their GDP to foreign assistance, and um, we had the biggest budget in absolute size, but as relative
Okay.
to our GDP, it was probably the smallest of the big donors.
Really?
And there still are international organizations like the World Food Program and the United
Uh-huh.
Nations Development Program and whatnot, but a lot of them depended heavily on the U.S. portion of their own budget. So
Yeah.
they've all suffered from this general pullback in the U.S. engagement overseas. Um, I can only hope that they will continue to support and even beef up their programs, given the fact that ours are over, most of them.
Yeah. Right. It's something interesting to think about, and I wish we had a pie chart that would show us what our country spends our money on. I don't know, maybe there is one out there, but I think it would bring insight to a lot of the things that we're reading online and probably contradict
That's right.
what we're hearing about, you know? So,
As I said, it was not a corrupt organization. We had bad actors like all agencies,
yeah.
but
Yep.
in general, it was trying to do something that the U.S. thought the U.S. Congress and executive branch and State Department thought was useful.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the most important point was that it was approved by
Right.
yeah, by the government. It's not like you guys were just running crazy. So, all right, sounds good. Well, I want to thank you for being here today. And where can everybody get your book?
Well, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
There's an ebook. I think the ebooks there's a it's for sale now. The ebook is there's a special. I think it runs through March 4th. There's a 2.99,
Okay.
as they
Sounds
used to
good.
say on the Mad magazine. That's cheap, but
Yeah, it
it's
is.
on Barnes and Noble too. You can get it on their platform,
Okay.
print on demand, so it'll come
Yeah.
out if you order it. So
Perfect.
it's not on
Sounds good.
shelves, but it's they'll send it to you if you. I have a Substack too. It's a Clifford.Brown at Substack.com, where I post assorted articles and thoughts that I have about development. But it's a wider topic than just USAID. So
Okay.
if people are interested.
Yeah, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. So,
You bet. Take care.
yep, I'll be in touch.